Hey there, Photography 2 students, and as you can see by the title, we are actually going to be working in a module called Macro Photography. However, when you're done the course, you're going to see the Macro Photography module called Project B on your report card. So just so that you know, you'll see this Project B on the header of the website, and you'll see it on your report card, but every assignment will be about macro photography, and all of the words and the terminology you will use will refer to this as the macro photography module, or the macro photography 1 credit course, to use the proper terminology. So what is macro photography? Well, I'm going to give you a very simple definition, and I'm going to tell you that macro photography is close-up photography. Just to pause here for one brief moment, it is important to know that you will probably run across a number of different definitions for macro photography besides the one that I'm showing you now. However, it doesn't really matter today that there are more than one definition, and really it's semantics. The big question is what are we taking pictures of? You're taking pictures of things that are very small and that will fill up the entire viewer of your frame in a very cool way. You'll actually take pictures of insects, flowers, fingerprints, or eyes in a way that makes those photographs huge, or rather the subjects in those photographs very huge. Now, although I say insects, tiny flowers, fingerprints, or eyes, you may do all of those or you may do some of those. It depends upon some of the choices that you make. Okay, so we talk about macro photography, and we also talk about some of the rules of macro photography, and I'm going to tell you right now that sometimes you're going to be presented with a challenge that under normal shooting circumstances would be easy for you to solve. Yet here you might run across a few interesting things that will make your shooting a true challenge, and that is the point of this whole course. I want to show you some examples here. Here is the, if you can't tell what this is, I'll guide you through that. This is the top of a pop can. That's close. That is a little tiny icicle. Well framed, by the way. Let's just call that lunch. I love the depth on this one. You can see of this flower, very out of focus at the front and the back. And knowing the nodes, the checkerboard pattern, we've got the subject, which is the, I believe, the pistils of this flower in complete focus. Very nice line. One of my favorite shots to share with you. I did not shoot any of these pictures, by the way, and this may give you a flashback to an assignment that I was hoping you could accomplish. And in this course, you should be able to accomplish this type of a shot. I love this reflective pattern. Let me tell you how they did this one. It's actually just a surface of dots with a spoon, and the spoon is taking the reflection of those dots, and that makes this cool image. Yeah, it's really a fly. This is actually from a series of shots, A Day in the Life of the Fly. And if you've got a dead insect and you want to start messing around and create a few of these things, talk to me about it. I would be more than happy to support your creative endeavor. Recognize that you're dealing with, looks like, two depths here. You've got the front and you've got the back. The back looks like a stained glass window, but it is actually a graffitied wall. It was all built specifically for this shot, so it might be that you build a quick little set, or you consider shooting different ideas. Okay, so where to shoot? When we do macro photography, it's not about specifically where you're shooting, it's recognizing that there are opportunities all around us. So the short answer to the question, where do we shoot, is everywhere. And the great thing is, with practice, inspiration, persistence, and time, you can add to your skills in shooting macro images. And that means that if you can stop and pause and reflect and just breathe, in that moment, you'll probably be able to find some very cool shots right within your immediate area. You don't have to go very far. I'm not going to limit you to your seat when you take pictures, but I will let you know that it's quite possible for you to spend the next 12 to 15 classes in your seat with a camera shooting different areas around your desk. And to tell you the truth, not be bored because you'd be shooting different things all the time. So you have to look at the opportunities, and that means you have to focus on small details that are around you. That's where the inspiration comes from. And then also through practice, you start to actually see, oh, this is an area that I can shoot. There's an opportunity here. And you start to see those small opportunities in those small micro environments that you're shooting. So the gear that we're using in this module are 4 different methods of shooting. The first method is we're going to use a Sigma macro lens. This is a pretty cool lens. It's a 70 to 300, and anything above 200 will allow you to go into macro mode. I will show you how to use this. For those that are doing the Sigma macro lens assignment, you'll have a video that goes over that. And you'll actually have a video that goes over each of these different technologies. So this one is a normal lens, and it has the ability to shoot 1 to 2. That means twice the normal size of an image can fill the frame. So if something was 1 centimeter in length, you can actually get 2 centimeters of length for that object on your sensor. And the sensor is just a little bit bigger than that, so it could actually hold that image. The second method of shooting for equipment is the close-up filters. Some also call these close-up lenses, but they do screw on to the front of your typical 52 millimeter diameter lens that you have. So your 17 to 55 or even your 55 to 200 millimeter lens will take these close-up filters. I would like you to know that you're going to be dealing with 3 of them, a 3+, a 2+, and a 1+. If you're going to shoot at 6 times or 12, you actually screw the close-up filters on from the largest diopter. So 3+ would be the largest diopter of 3, 2, and 1. That goes on first, followed by the 2, followed by the 1. That's the correct order. And again, we'll go over that. This almost looks like a normal camera, except if you notice it says reverse the lens or reverse lens. That means that the front of the camera, where the body is closest to the front of the lens. So we've actually reversed the lens. So the lens, this part that you see that's on the front of the lens, is really the back of the lens. We have to be very careful with this, of course, because there's no protection back here for the back of the lens. It's actually a pretty cheap way of getting into macro photography also. The adapter that we're using costs about $35, and we were able to use some old Pentax lenses that were actually in a cupboard here when film used to be shot. Great thing about that is we can control the depth of field by using the manual aperture controls found on these old lenses. And here is the fourth method. This is a bellows system. This allows us to get up pretty darn close to a subject, and this tube is black and it doesn't allow light to go through, and the lens that's on the front, again, these lenses, you can control the aperture. So what you're going to find out is after we get everything set up, chances are the only thing that you actually mess around with is the ISO and the shutter speed. Once you get your aperture set, you don't worry about it at the front. You worry about your shutter speed and your ISO. And from those 2 factors, a tripod becomes important. So let me just say, we'll get to that in a second, but depth of field, very, very important. The depth of field for a macro photograph ranges from about 1 millimeter in depth to over 26.5 millimeters, so about 2.5 centimeters. It's not often that you're actually going to get your 2.5 centimeters. It depends upon the subject that you're shooting, and these are general, but the pattern is very relevant. If you want a greater depth of field, you want to use a larger F number. With this factor, you need to address how you're going to get light to the sensor, because as you know, the larger the F number, so if you're at F22, it's going to require a great deal of time to get the sensor to take in the amount of light that it needs to properly expose that image. So, knowing that we're still talking about depth of field, knowing that, we're also going to talk about what's important for how you're going to get the light to sensor. One other thing that is pretty interesting is that um, when you focus on something, there's an equal value for focus in front and behind the subject. That means 50% of the subject is in focus just in front of where you focused, and 50% of the focus is just behind where the subject is in focus. This is a little bit different than normal photography because in normal photography, when you focus on a subject, 1/3 of the focus is in front of the subject and 2/3 is behind. So if you're looking at depth of field and the difference, when you shoot macro, it's 50% in front and 50% behind. When you do normal shooting, where it's not macro and you're using like your 17 to 55, your 18 to 55, and your 55 to 200, you have 1/3 of the subject in front of the focus point in focus and 2/3 of that subject area in focus behind where it's focused. So the big thing here is this last sentence. This is the part of the experiment. When you shoot, you're going to take a picture, and chances are you're going to do what's called chimping. You're going to look at the back of the camera, and you're going to look at the image, and you're going to find out whether or not that worked for you and it worked for the subject you're shooting. Okay, light. This is huge. If you are using a large aperture value, like a large f number, 16, 22, and in some cases 45, the amount of light that you're going to be required to get to the sensor is a lot. So here's 3 solutions to help you ensure that you're getting proper exposure when you use such small aperture openings, and that means a large f number. You can increase the amount of light, and you could do this in a number of different ways. You can use a flash, you can use external lights, normal lights, or you can use reflectors. And reflectors can come in any shape and size. Just remember you're dealing with things that are very small, so even a white piece of paper would work really well as a reflector. External lights, you can also use flashlights, and we do have access to those. We also have a few flashes that you can try, and you can see whether or not you can light your image up. And here's the other cool thing. You don't have to use just one. You can use 2 or 3 in combination. So the next thing is the lengthening of the shutter speed. That means longer exposures. So when you take your pictures, instead of shooting for, say, 1/5 of a second, your camera might be open for a full second or even longer. Whatever it takes to get your subject properly exposed and with good light. And if you're going to be using longer exposures, you have to remember that you need to have a tripod. We'll talk about that in a second. The last thing that you can do to make sure that your subject is properly exposed is you can change your ISO. Go higher if you need to. Another important point is that when you focus, you're going to be focusing manually. You are never going to allow the camera to focus for you. And here's the thing. Chances are you're going to be moving the camera towards or away from your subject to get the focus. That means that, of course, practice is involved, but that means that when you think you found what you want to shoot, you look through the lens and you move in and out until the subject is in focus. Unlike hooking the camera up and then trying to focus on it by moving the focus ring on your lens. You are the moving focus ring. Yeah, that was corny. I don't know what else to say. Okay. This is pretty important. Most of the time you're going to have direct control over your shutter speed on the back of your camera, and the lenses that you use are generally older lenses here where there is aperture control on the lens, or yeah, on the lens that you're using. This is going to be a touch and go experiment for you to figure out what that relationship looks like, and that's why there's experimenting with these pictures. You're going to figure out about manual apertures as well as figuring out what combination of aperture and shutter speed is going to work well for the shot you're trying to achieve. Remember, if it's dark, you either have to open up the aperture or you have to lengthen the shutter speed. Very important points. There's no one lens correct for every shot you're going to do. think about the environment and your creative vision when you're shooting. That means you have to visualize what your final shot could look like even before you shoot it. And the big thing is, I want you to enjoy the shooting that you're doing. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the slideshow, and yeah, it's been about 14 and a half minutes, but this is really a condensed version of what you're going to be doing over the next 15 classes. So I'd like you to take a look at these technologies, and I want you to reflect on the value that this tutorial, this video has for you. And I want you to make sure that as you approach the next 4 assignments in this module, that you feel empowered to try new things and ask questions when you need to. Okay, good luck and enjoy the module that we are calling Project B, but macro photography.